Good afternoon and welcome to Coverings Connected and the Tile Installations and Critical Lighting webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items. All attendees are in listen-only mode. You can submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the question section of the control panel. You may send in your question at any time during the presentation. We will get to as many as time allows. If you are having problems connecting or any other issues, often closing the window and starting a new window will fix the problem. If you are having problems with your computer audio, call the number on your invitation to listen via your phone. Make sure to visit the website to take advantage of all of the other great content. I would now like to introduce our presenter, Mark Heinlein, Trading Director with the National Tile Contractors Association. Take it away, Mark.
Hey, thanks, Allie, and welcome, everyone. It is great to be back here at Coverings Connected. It's good to be presenting with you today, and it's been a while, and I'm so glad to be back. Thanks for having me, Allie, and I want to tell you a little bit about today's program. Today, we're going to talk about tile installations and critical lighting. Sounds like kind of a niche topic, but really, it's a huge topic that we should all be aware of the details for critical lighting on our tile installations. And when you think about it, our tile installations are sandwiched between two layers, the substrate layer and the lighting layer that illuminates it. So everything that's underneath the tile, then we have our tile, then we have the light that shows us our tile installation. Now, both of these elements they always have a tremendous impact on how the tile installation is viewed. The substrate has an impact, and of course, the lighting has an impact on how we view our tile installation. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This isn't a substrate class, but you're going to hear me talk about the substrate a lot, and a few other things as well. Let's get started, and this is what we're going to learn about today. We're going to learn about the requirements of that substrate before the tile is installed to provide a flat surface that meets the tile industry standards. And of course, we'll learn about critical lighting and what types of lighting and how they affect a tile's finished appearance. Then we'll talk about some procedures to reduce or eliminate, hopefully, the effects that this critical lighting can have on, or negatively have on our finished tile installation's appearance. And I'm going to talk to you about how to properly view a finished tile installation. All important objectives that I hope to cover today. First of all, I'd love to look at a few photos about installations that are done right. You know, we see so many failure photos. I love to look at beautiful pictures of tile work. And we're going to see a few, let's call them failure photos during this presentation. But when it's done right, a tile installation is just absolutely terrific. Now, look at this first photo I have up here. Take a look at that top left corner of the picture. And that white line you see, that's the lights. And the lights are mounted near the wall and they're shining down on this very glossy, very bright tile installation, and it looks great, doesn't it? Or how about this classic bathroom? Lots of lights and darks and contrasts and lots of opportunity for shadows being cast everywhere. And you know what? It looks terrific. Light flooding in from the windows, light from above, probably light from a skylight, showing us all of this beautiful, classic, timely installation. Looks great. A very colorful installation like this one is super dramatic. Glossy tile, a couple of different finishes there, lots of just outstanding work involved here. And in this case, look at where the light is. Can you see the light? It's mounted right on the wall, right above that vanity sink, right above the mirror, shining down on that wall and making it look fabulous. Even look above that vanity sink. There's a mirror there. And through that mirror, we can see all of the tile behind it. It looks good too. I'm not seeing any problems here at all. Good looking installation. And another colorful installation looks absolutely terrific. Well lit, brightly lit. What a great job by everyone. A large bathroom. Beautiful bathroom. Lights coming in from a skylight. There's overhead lighting. There's windows all around letting natural light in. A nice big tiled floor with large format tile. Looks absolutely terrific. Outsides of buildings have a lot of tile. Now, this structure has a lot of different types of finishes, including large format tile, some glass tile, a few other things. And you know what we have on a building like this one? We've got sunshine, we have natural light, and we can't control where that light is. That light is going to shine, maybe in this case, on every side of this building. Every side that's tiled will receive natural light, and it needs to look great. And this one certainly does, doesn't it? What a fabulous job. But what about when things aren't done quite right, or maybe they're done just wrong? You know, but sadly, we've all probably seen an installation like this one where we're looking at a wall and right at eye level, of course, right at mirror level, and we see these shadows being cast from an adjacent tile to the next tile to the next tile, and those shadows are being cast by the light that's coming from above. If you look at the ceiling and where the ceiling meets the wall in this picture, that bright white line there, that's the light. It's up there right against the wall, and it's shining down on the wall and illuminating the wall very nicely, but it's also creating shadows where the tiles meet the tile. When the tiles get a little bit smaller and we have that same sort of situation, well, there's more grout joints, there's more opportunities for shadows, and more opportunity for it to not look great. This is another exterior job, and this is more of a large format type of tile here, a plank tile. Maybe a full offset or a 50% offset there. And can you see all of those shadows being cast? Let's take another view at it. That picture isn't in the daylight. This is at night. See the lights in the eaves up there, those recessed lights shining down on this wall, and see the shadow effect that they're creating when the shadows are coming out, being created by the tiles that aren't absolutely flat, one next to another. The lights are creating that. It's looking that way at night, and it isn't looking great. This is the first time I'm showing you a floor like this one with a large format tile, a plank tile, and it doesn't look wonderful, does it? I can think of a few possible causes of where things went wrong here. Maybe that substrate wasn't flat enough or to meet industry standards. Maybe that tile had some warpage beyond the manufacturing standards. Maybe the installer didn't have the right skill level. Maybe the fact that lighting, natural lighting was going to shine in on this job wasn't considered before the installation. 2, 3, 4 things, any single one, maybe all of them, could have caused this to not be a good looking installation. So what is critical lighting anyway? Well, it's lighting that when it shines on our tile installation at a sharp angle, it's going to have a pronounced effect or enhance the shading or the lighting or the visibility or the viewing of that installation. The effect of critical lighting is most pronounced when any bright light source illuminates a tiled surface at a sharp angle. I want to spend a couple of minutes and talk about our reference material and supporting documentation. If you've attended Coverings Connected before, presented by NTCA or many other people, or if you've attended an NTCA training program, you will already be familiar with the tile industry standards, methods, and best practices, and of course manufacturer instructions that we follow. Here is ANSI A137.1. This is the standard specification for the manufacturing of ceramic tile. This is ANSI A108, A118, and A136. This is the material specification and installation standard for ceramic tile. Here is the Tile Council of North America handbook for installing tile. And as a companion volume to all of these other handbooks and standards is the NTCA, the National Tile Contractors Association reference manual. And I'd like to take one moment and ask you if you own these books to take a look at their covers and look at the date on the cover. Take a look, for instance, at the reference manual. You'll notice this is the 2021 edition. If you don't own the most recent volume of any of these publications, you're out of date. You need to get the most up-to-date book that has been published. If you're a member of the NTCA, we'll update you annually on the NTCA reference manual and the TCNA handbook. If you don't own these publications yet, please get them into your reference library. I do want to say this, that I use the NTCA reference manual as my primary resource for putting this program together. Our technical committee has a 9-page document in the 2021 edition of the reference manual. And when you get yours, or if you already own it, here's your homework from me. Hey, this is training. I'm giving you some homework. Take a look at the 9-page section on critical lighting, read through it. It's very understandable. There's a lot of pictures, and I think you'll be glad that you did. Okay, let's get into a little bit of the technicalities of this. Grazing and washing walls. If you look at the detail on the left, you see the word grazing in that little picture? That is the ceiling in this diagram. Then over to the left is a wall. And that little white dot, that's the light. That's the light source. And in this case, it's shown being recessed up into a niche, or I guess maybe that's known as a soffit. I don't know if that's the right term for that. But it's up there in the niche, and that light is shining down, illuminating everything in its path as it falls down that wall surface. Anything on that wall, when that light hits it, is going to cast a shadow beneath it. No matter if it's tile or dirt or a bulge or some imperfection, that light will point it out. On the right, we have an example of washing the light. Right there beneath the word washing is the light fixture in this installation, in this situation. And that light fixture is back a little bit from the wall, and it's broadcasting its light onto the wall and coming at it from a different angle than that graze lighting. The graze lighting is coming down onto the wall from a very sharp angle. That wash wall lighting is coming at it at a much more obtuse angle and lighting that wall, and I'm sure beautifully. The tones will be great, the color will be great, just not so many shadows being cast. These are a couple of photographs out of the NTCA reference manual 9-page section on critical lighting that describe the placement of lighting on a wall or along a wall to illuminate a wall. In this case, look at the top or the ceiling of both of these photographs. This is a suspended ceiling. So we know that those panels are a 24 by 48 inch panel. The light panel is a 24 by 48. And in the photo on the left, take a look at that one. The light panel is positioned right up against the wall. And you can see in the tile on the wall, there are some shadows being cast. Now move over to the photo on the right-hand side. Take a look at where that light is now. It's been moved back 24 inches, the distance of that ceiling panel grid. Now we're more washing that wall in light. Those shadows have magically, well, not so magically, but they've disappeared because of the angle of incidence of the light being shown on it. Here's another example, a smaller tile on the left with the graze lighting, the light up against the wall, smaller tile. Many more opportunities for shadows to be cast, and boy, can we see them, right? They really jump out at us. On the right-hand side, once again, take a look at that light. It's been moved back away from the wall much softened the effect of the shadowing and the lighting on the wall. The lighting looks great. The wall is well illuminated. Tile looks wonderful. Maybe still a couple of shadows visible there, but far fewer, and probably that wall is fully acceptable for a finished installation. I've listed here what I feel are the 6 primary causes of issues with critical lighting. I've already mentioned it a bunch of times, substrate flatness, which is key. Substrate flatness must be in tolerance based on the tile industry standards. Tile tolerances themselves, found in ANSI A137.1, I'll talk about those briefly. We're talking about wedging, or how square a tile is, and warpage, how flat a tile is. Warpage is measured in a couple of directions, along the edge and diagonally. Those things, how square a tile is and how flat it is, have a tremendous effect on whether critical lighting will cause shadows across the surface of the tile. Grout joint width. What? Yeah. Grout joint width helps us soften the effects of critical lighting. The narrower the grout joint, the more of an effect the critical or acute lighting will have, the more shadows it will create. If we open up that grout joint a bit, then we're going to soften the effects of critical lighting. I'll get into the technicalities of that in a few minutes. Have I mentioned installer skill yet? Well, installer skill is important in everything that we do. Installers need to be very well versed in so many things with tile: substrate flatness, whether the tile is square or flat, how to properly use a trowel. I could go on and on and on about all of the things a highly skilled installer must know. Because you know what? There's nothing easy about tile, and don't let anybody ever tell you that there is. Tile is hard. It's a very it's a difficult profession that we need to know a lot of things about. So installer skill, we need to take a look in the mirror and address whether to ourselves whether we have the knowledge, the understanding, the skill ourselves to do a job correctly, or if the people working for us have all the skills they need, and to train ourselves for it. Patterns and layout. We'll talk in a few minutes about patterns and layout and how they can affect positively or negatively effects caused by critical lighting. And as we've already seen, the placement of the lights. Placement of lighting will have an effect on what shadows are cast on our finished tile installations. Once again, referring back to the NTCA reference manual, I want to take a quote out of there. And the reference manual tells us that lippage, we all know what lippage is. It's the variation in height between adjacent tiles. Lippage is most significantly influenced by substrate flatness and the tile's facial dimension irregularities. Well, let me tell you what those are. Substrate flatness, I've already talked about substrate prep. Improper or no substrate prep, that's when the substrate is not flat to meet the tile industry standards found in ANSI A108s. And facial dimension irregularities, that means that the tile perhaps doesn't meet the requirements of ANSI A137.1. There are tests in A137.1 that a tile manufacturer can have its tile meet for flatness and squareness, how square a tile is and how flat a tile is. It's called wedging and warpage. Again, the direction of lighting traveling across our finished tile surface will have a very profound impact on how we view that finished installation. In ANSI A108.02, we'll find the requirements for substrate flatness. We need to understand as tile industry professionals, and by professionals, I mean specifiers, architects, designers, contractors, installers, estimators, project managers, distributors, salespeople, all manner of tile industry professionals need to understand the requirements for substrate flatness that is found in ANSI A108, and to make sure that requirements to prepare that substrate are contained in every specification, that somebody is getting paid to make that substrate flat for our finished tile installation. Critically important. And here's where we find that information. I want to talk briefly about concrete and substrate flatness. If you work installing tile or writing a specification for installing tile on a concrete substrate, you need to consider some special things about concrete. When do you inspect the concrete? Well, the concrete contractor or people who pour the concrete, they've got a big job ahead of them. That's a lot of work. I'm terrible at that. You would never want me to be your concrete person ever. It takes a lot of skill. And when the concrete is poured, it's allowed to cure for a number of hours or a couple of days before the concrete contractor comes back in and checks it for flatness using their scale called an FF scale. They can test in certain areas of the concrete, usually in the middle of the pour, and they find whether it meets their requirements for flatness. If it does, then they're down the road to the next job. Well, in the case of a new construction job, like this picture that we're looking at here, which happens to be an airport, the tile contractor might not come onto the job for a number of months or weeks or months or a very long time. And in this case, that concrete is going through a curing process. So the time between when the concrete contractor checked it for flatness a couple of days after it was poured, and they said, yep, looks good, we're out of here, and the time between the tile contractor comes in and onto the job, something might have happened with that concrete. It might have cured some more, and in the curing process, it might have curled, causing the concrete to become less flat over time. And in this case, in this particular job, the tile contractor did come in at the 6-month point after the walls were built on top of that concrete pour, after all of that glass was installed, and the tile contractor came in. They brought their 10-foot straight edge and lasers, and they checked that floor for flatness, that substrate, and they found it wasn't flat. So they went back to the general contractor, the architect, specifier, the owner, and they said, hey, look, we can't install our large format tile, our 12 by 48 inch tile on here without having the substrate prepped to be flat to tile industry standards, because it won't end up being a flat finished installation. And when the sun shines through the glass, all of these walls, it's not going to look pretty because there will be a lot of shadows cast. So this is a success story we're looking at. We're looking at a beautiful installation where a contractor who understood the tile industry standards made the right communications. They were paid to install a flat substrate on top of the unflat concrete. They installed their large format tile flat and correctly, and it resulted in the beautiful installation that we're looking at right here. That, my friends, is a success story. Let's take a little bit of a look, a little video here in checking a concrete substrate for flatness. And here we see a tile contractor, a very experienced contractor, bringing in a 10-foot straight edge and checking their substrate, their concrete substrate for flatness. And what do you see? You see a high spot that they're finding. You see the 10-foot straight edge rocking back and forth, bouncing around, and they're finding that they're not flat to within the industry tolerances. And that even means this very long slope toward that drain in the floor. Look at that hump right there in the slope toward that drain. Well, that tile contractor needs to make that area flat. Probably, I'm guessing what they did, they ground that hump until it was flat to meet the flatness of the rest of the installation before they proceeded with their tile installation. Smart heads up ball right there on that tile contractor's part. It's a risky business to accept other trades' problems that they can possibly create for us. When the tile contractor comes onto a job, chances are someone else has installed a substrate. In the case of the wall on the left, look at that picture. That is a 58-inch straight edge on at this point on that job. And you can see using those spacers, there's a 3/16 inch on one end and a 1/16 of an inch gap on the other end with a big hump in the middle. Installing tile over that hump will result in a finished installation like is shown in that picture on the right. Look at that straight edge once again. There's a huge gap in the flatness of that installation. If we as a tile contractor install on that, then we're accepting the installation of the substrate done by others and the effect that it had on our job. And now it will become our problem. We want to answer those questions, have that resolved, or resolve it ourselves and get paid doing it before the installation of the tile occurs. Here's another short video that I want to show you. In this video, there is, let's get this started. These contractors here are very highly skilled residential tile contractors, and they knew they had a highly detailed job coming up right here. They had this curved wall, that large format tile, I think that's about a 2 by 18 inch long, large format tile. And these installers knew that they needed to make a very flat substrate to install this tile on so it appeared flat in the finished installation. And what they did is they used a laser to flatten that substrate, to work with their substrate flatness as they made the substrate flat and installed it themselves so that it would reflect in their finished tile installation. And they're showing us here in the finished tile installation, the laser on top of the finished tile and how that laser line is being split by the surface of the tile. Some is landing on the surface of the tile, the width of that laser line, and the rest of it's landing over there on the doorway. That is a flat finished tile installation. That is installer skill. Right there, a fine example of it. Let's move on to our ANSI A137.1 specifications for ceramic tile. You heard me talk about things like wedging and warpage. That's just two of the approximately 21 tests that can be done on any given tile. Now, not all of these tests are always done on every tile that's manufactured or produced. Some might not be relevant for some situations. But when it comes to these tests, a manufacturer who has tested their tile, manufactured their tile, and tested their tile to meet these industry standards found in ANSI A137.1 will let us know what tests their tiles passed. And how do we know? We as the installer, for instance, or the specifier, well, how do we know? Well, we can read the box, for example. The manufacturer is very proud that their tile meets or exceeds the ANSI A137.1 tests, so they'll publish it right on their carton. Or we can ask them for their technical data sheet. They'll be very happy to tell us which, in particular, of the 21 or 22 tests that their tile was tested to and whether or not it passed. So check with the manufacturer of the tile. They can get you that information and you'll know then if it meets the requirements for wedging or warpage, critical to our discussion here today. So, substrate prep. Look at that. That's the first bullet point I have here again. Look at what I have on top of the screen. Before the job site work begins, at NTCA, our technical team takes a lot of technical questions in the forms of phone calls and emails, and we get asked frequently lots of questions. One of them we get asked fairly often is there a standard for lippage? Well, we already know what the problem is. The installation has been installed. The work is done. Somebody's viewing the work and something isn't looking quite right. Boy, and we all know that it's hard to turn back the hands of time to correct the problem. A tile installation is a permanent finish. You know, tile is a finish, but it's a permanent finish. Everything beneath the finish matters. We need to start from square one before the installation begins to look at things like the substrate and make sure that the substrate is flat before we begin tiling, before we bid the job. And as we're specifying the job, we need to make sure that we specify materials and funds for labor to make that substrate flat for the finished tile installation. So before we begin the work, we need to check the walls and floors, the substrate for flatness. We also need to take a look at the type of lighting. If you're estimating a job and you get the specification and you're looking through it, do yourself a favor. Go over to the lighting section, find what type of lights there are, look at where they're mounted or installed, and see if they're going to have a profound effect on your finished installation after you win the work and install the job. Do yourself another favor. Take a look at the window and door schedule, or maybe not the schedule, but the placement of the windows and doors, and see if there's a lot of glass that will be shining, allowing natural light to shine in and enhance the beauty of your tile, or cause shadows along and across the grout joints and between the tiles on your finished installation. Important things that you want to know before the work begins. We always recommend doing a mock-up and getting getting all the parties together that are involved with the job, general contractor, the owner, the architect, the specifier, the tile contractor, getting everybody involved and view that mock-up and determine whether or not it's acceptable and get that approval in writing before the work begins. When it comes to critical lighting, if ever possible, get the actual lighting installed before the work begins. See if you can get the electrician in there. See if you can get those lights installed. I'm going to show you some examples of how that will help you have a great finished installation. Pardon me. Finally, after you've done this before the work begins after you've analyzed it, submit a cautionary letter to the architect, GC, the owner, and I'm going to show you a picture of this on the next slide. Submit a letter as the tile contractor and communicate your concerns before the work begins. Here's the NTCA reference manual. On the right-hand side there of your screen, there's the sample letter for the tile contractor to use to talk about the critical lighting issues that they found that could impact their finished installation. Let me zoom in a little bit on this letter. And what this letter says, hey, I'm going to paraphrase. Hey, I'm the tile contractor for this job, and I'm an industry expert on this. And I want to let you know that I've looked at all aspects of this job. We need to consider the type of lighting and the placement of that lighting. We need to consider substrate flatness. all for the cause of making certain that we have a flat finished tile installation that will be beautifully lit without any shadows impacting how our tile installation is viewed. Let's talk about it. I want you to consider it. You need to be aware of it. Here's my letter. Here's my phone number. Give me a call. Let's have a meeting. When you get on to the job site and you start looking around at your lighting situation and how everything will be lit, you need to have a little bit of an understanding about lights and locations, don't you? Did I say tile installation isn't necessarily easy? We've got to know a lot of things. We've got to know about lights, how our installations will be lit. We're the last person in the chain of command for the installation, in the chain of installation before that installation is. So let's look at whether the light is next to the wall, whether it's away from the wall, whether it will be reflected off mirrors, whether it will be an exterior installation and lit 360 degrees, whether there's a lot of doors and windows that will have natural light coming in and enhancing or maybe degrading the viewing of our finished installation. Look at the door and window placement and how that will affect. Know where the light is coming from. Think about it before the job begins. Think about it, or else we could look at an issue after the fact, after it's really hard to fix. I want to show you a picture of a success story right here. This pizza oven with this curved finished tile installation is absolutely gorgeous. And it is a great example of how everything went right. The tile contractor on this job took a look ahead and they saw that this would have graze wall lighting recessed above the ceiling. If you look around at the top of that installation, you'll see where the lights are installed. Well, the tile contractor requested that the permanent lighting be installed, number one, before the substrate for the tile installation was installed. And then number two, before the tile was installed. And that happened for this job. So the permanent lights were installed first. Then the tile contractor came in and made certain the substrate was beautifully flat before the tile went on. Then as the tile went on, the lights were turned on. The tile installer could use the actual lighting to verify their work as they were installing the tile. They'd install some courses of tile, step back, look at it from all the angles, make certain it looked great, and then they would move on. As they finished that job, the end result became a terrific looking installation. Doesn't it look great? Great job by that contractor and everybody involved. Now, this one didn't turn out so well, did it? Had the permanent lights been installed for this job, the tile contractor could have viewed their installation as it would appear as a finished installation while they were installing it. They would have seen these issues as they were setting the tile, and they would have corrected that then and there. In this case, the lights weren't installed beforehand. The tile went up, the electricians came in at some later point, the lights went in, they were turned on, and this is what we see today. Could have done a better job here. So when the project's completed, the lights come on, what happens next? Well, we get a punch list if problems are found. When you get a punch list like this as a tile contractor, what I recommend you do is go in and do a visual inspection of your work before you march over to the meeting with the GC or the owner or the architect or whomever you're meeting with, whomever gave you that punch list. And ask yourself, did you do your due diligence? Think back, did I do a mock-up for this job? Was that mock-up approved by everybody? Where's that signed document? Oh, wait a minute, we didn't do a mock-up. Oh, well. Do I know all of the tile industry standards? Am I able to communicate the standards to support myself as the tile industry professional in this meeting? Did we install the tile correctly? Does our installation meet the tile industry standards? Wow, and if you have that knowledge, maybe I can replace a few tiles here and there to make certain we're in tolerance even before I go on to this meeting to try to make my installation correct. I've got an example of this scenario coming up next. Take a look at this job. I've got a few shots of this job here, and I want to describe it to you. Now, this is a job where the installation looks good, right? It looks super nice. The tile contractor on this job actually set the tile without the substrate being as flat as it should have been before they got started. Well, they got lucky here, didn't they? Looks great with that installation there. We look to the left, looks good. Let's take a look to the right. We see a little bit different tile there, some strip glass, some mosaic tile. Floor tile looks good. Look in the upper corner of that picture. The lights are right up against the wall. It's Gray's wall lighting, and yet the installation looks super nice. But let's take a head-on look. This is right in the middle of the two pictures that I'm showing you. Look at the tile on the wall. You see some issues there? You see some shadows being cast by that Gray's lighting? So this is why the tile contractor was being called into a meeting. Those shadows being cast. I want to zoom in a little bit closer there. Now you can see them nice up and close. Well, here's what the tile contractor did. They had a very thorough working knowledge of the tile industry standards that I've described. And they were able to point out that our tile installation actually meets the lippage requirements for the tile industry standards. They went ahead and they went through all of the wall tile, and they examined their own work. They found a few that were out of tolerance. They pulled those tiles, replaced them, regrouted them, and then they were able to go into their meeting and show that the finished tile installation actually did fall within the tile industry standards for a finished tile installation in terms of lippage, acceptable lippage, in terms of grout joint width, in terms of the pattern. In all of those areas, they were good to go. So after they could communicate that properly, everybody was happy, they got paid and moved on to the next job. Let's talk quickly about what allowable lippage is. I'm zooming in here to a section in ANSI A108, and I will describe briefly what allowable lippage is. When you have a tile that was manufactured to meet the warpage requirements of ANSI A137.1, and you set that tile, the actual tile you set might have some allowable or inherent warpage in it. You take that actual warpage in the actual tile that you set and add to it 1/32 of an inch for human error. And that is the calculation for allowable lippage in a tile installation. Grout joint size matters. What these words right here say, that if you have tiles that vary in facial dimension, they vary in size from one tile to the next, then you need to open up the grout joint to accommodate the variation in tile size. Let's give an example, and this does give an example. It says, for instance, if you have tiles that vary 1/16 of an inch from one tile to the next, then you need to multiply that 1/16 of an inch times 3 to get your grout joint size. So in that example, 1/16 of an inch times 3 means you need a 3/16 of an inch wide grout joint. A lot of words here, but when it comes to warpage and grout joints, what this page says is that For rectified tiles, tiles that are greater than 15 inches on a side, you need at least an 1/8 of an inch grout joint. For calibrated tiles that have at least a 15-inch long side, you need a 3/16 inch wide grout joint. This is right in the tile industry standards. And what I've highlighted in green is that you need to open up that grout joint to accommodate any acceptable or allowable warpage that's within that tile. So the example here is for a rectified tile that has 1/32 of an inch warpage along the edge, you need to add that to the 1/8 of an inch grout joint. Let me show it to you this way. A rectified tile with a 1/32 of an inch warpage, that's allowable, requires an 1/8 of an inch grout joint minimum, a 1/32 inch to accommodate that warpage, gives you a 5/32 of an inch average grout joint width required for that installation. A little bit techie there, I know. When you get the books, you can read it for yourself. And if you're an NTCA member, email us and we'll help you figure that out. I said patterns matter. The 33% offset, have you ever heard of that rule? Well, it comes out of ANSI A108. And what it does is for tiles that have some warpage, we divvy that up. We spread it out throughout the tile installation so that the high spots aren't next to the low spots in tiles 15 inches or longer. And that means that we're going to have fewer chances for shadowing when the light is cast across that tile. So again, a tile with a 15-inch or greater length in a side, we need to have at least a 33% offset. Okay, before the installation, you need to refer to your standard specifications and your reference documentation, everything I've been talking about right here. And you need to ask yourself, does the tile meet the ANSI specifications, ANSI A137.1? Is the substrate flat per ANSI A108? Are there any natural or artificial lighting issues that will cause shadowing on a properly installed installation? Have you read and understood the NTCA reference manuals, documentation, and guidelines for critical lighting? In that reference manual, there's also an inspection checklist that you can find and follow to help you have success. After you've done all this and you find some concerns, have a conversation before the installation with the owner, architect, GC, all the parties involved, and discuss this before the bad thing happens at the end of the day. Talk about it before it happens. How to inspect finished tile work. There's a page in the TCNA handbook that tells you how to inspect a finished tile installation. And here's briefly what it says. This is one of the best things you can possibly read. Get your 2021 copy, find this page, read it. When you inspect an installation, don't get down on your hands and knees. Don't get right up next to that wall. Don't use a magnifying glass. Don't use a flashlight or a spotlight. Stand at normal viewing height and look down with the normal lighting conditions and look at that terrific installation. Look at that wall from a normal viewing distance in natural or intended lighting. Don't use a flashlight. Looks great, doesn't it? That's how we inspect finished tile work. We have a few pictures here of exteriors. I'm going to flash through these. See if you can find the lighting problems on these exterior installations. And when you think about critical lighting in an exterior, think about the sun illuminating all sides of that building and how it will affect the finished work. Whether that substrate was flat, what the pattern is, and how those shadows might show up. Now I know this one is some ungauged tile, but we need to take everything in consideration. We need to make all of our planning up front, have the hard conversations up front before the installation starts, before we're looking at problems, installation problems like these. So, how do we reduce or eliminate critical lighting issues? Proper substrate prep to begin with. Understanding the light source is the next critical thing. If that light source is up against the wall and we have an installation that was installed and meets the tile industry standards, like I discussed a few slides ago, and then the lights are turned on, and like in this case here, we see some shadows being cast, here's a tip. Maybe recommend adding some baffles or an opaque cover to that light. Try to tone down the sharpness of that light a little bit. Maybe if it's LED lights, maybe a baffle can help. Maybe changing those lights out for a softer type of light will help. And it will make that installation that was installed to meet the standards end up looking terrific. Once again, let's do a little bit of review here on how to reduce or eliminate critical lighting. You can also relocate the light. Instead of being up against the wall, back it up 18 inches, 24 inches, still going to be well lit, but it's going to look a heck of a lot better. Another way to reduce or eliminate critical lighting issues, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, consider installer skill. What is your education level for all of the things that I've been talking about? Substrate prep. You know, NTCA does a full day training program on substrate prep alone. We do these hands-on in person. Come to one of our workshops, get some additional training. Here's an example of an NTCA regional training program that you can attend. Here's just one of many of the people that have attended our programs, many programs. And look at the installer, very proud installer here on the right. That guy's been installing tile for a while, and he still came to our training program to work with us. So check out our website, tile-assn.com, find our education link, find our events calendar, attend one of our 180 plus programs that we'll be having somewhere in the United States in 2022. We'll be near you, I guarantee it. Another thing you can do is get yourself certified or hire certified tile installers and contractors. The Ceramic Tile Education Foundation certifies certified tile installers, or CTIs. These people have proven that they own, understand, and are able to use the tile industry standards, methods, and best practices. And the CTEF does advanced certifications. Here's a picture of the large format tiles advanced certification. You know what the first thing you do in the LFT certification is? You check your substrate for flatness, and it has to be made flat before you can install the tile and become certified. Check out the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation, CTEF, at their website, ceramictilefoundation.org. So all of these things I've talked about have hopefully allowed us to learn about the requirements for the substrate before we begin installing. Hopefully we've learned what critical lighting is and how it affects a tile's installation. We've learned the procedures for how we can reduce the effects of critical lighting on a tile installation. And I talked about the methods to properly inspect and view that finished tile installation. Allie, that's everything I have to present. Do we have any questions from our attendees?
Mark, I think everybody was just so stunned by that wonderful presentation that we have no questions right now. Is there anything else that you had to jettison, or anything else you'd like to cover while we wait for people to ask questions, if people are interested in doing so?
You know, I can talk a little bit. We've got a few minutes here. This topic, I just want to say this again. I think I said it at the beginning. It seems like kind of a niche topic. a small topic that's an outlier, not something we always talk about. But what I tried to say was everything that we do to design, specify, in our estimates, in our bid packages, in our installations, every single aspect of every tile installation matters greatly. And in this case, when everything is done right, the substrate is prepared properly, we select the right mortars, we mix them correctly, we select the right trowel, we trowel correctly, we select the right tile for the job, we do a mock-up, we have our knowledge of the tile industry standards, we have the communications, the conversations with all the parties involved, and then we install that installation, we see a problem, we stop, we ask questions, we analyze it. Then when everything is said and done, the lights are turned on, the sun comes up, the public and the owner view our installation and use it, everybody's happy. It's something we need to think about with every single installation. And with critical lighting, that is the one point that will shine on our work and allow our work to shine with or without shadows. Think about that as you're preparing your specification, as you're installing the tile. How will it appear when the lights come on, when the sun goes down and it's sundown and the light is shining on that floor in the car dealership that you just installed? Will there be shadows skittering across the floor, or will it look great? Think about those things before you start installing. Where's the light coming from? I hope that helps. And I do want to point out again, I'm on the training staff of the NTCA. I'm involved with the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation, and I'm very passionate about training for the tile industry. I'm passionate about training based on tile industry standards, methods, and best practices. And the NTCA is the training arm of the tile industry's standards. The CTEF is the certification arm. Come to our programs, get yourself certified. We would love to have you, we'd love to work with you, and be on your team and help you become a better tile industry professional.
Thank you so much, Mark. No questions, but one comment from the audience really reaffirming what you said earlier is that mock-ups with actual tile tolerances and actual lighting is essential, as you have explained for the last hour. So thank you so much. I think that was really important for everybody, and something that perhaps they had not considered before is really putting the lighting into the mix when they're creating something. On behalf of Coverings, thank you so much for joining us. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate it if you would complete it and provide your feedback. We hope that you will join us at Coverings 2022 live and in person in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Convention Center from April 5th through the 8th. Registration is now open and is complimentary as always. To register and for more information, visit coverings.com. Thank you again for a great presentation, Mark, and we'll hopefully see all of you in April. Have a great day.
See you next time.